You brought this to the table. You're starting us off.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Well, here's one that kind of popped in my head a few weeks ago when I was initially bringing this up to the group text, which is us three kind of throwing down ideas or just...
That's not your group text with Ken?
Nope. Yeah. Ken's not as savvy, I guess, in that sense. But yeah, this one kind of just like light bulb moment, you know what I mean? I was just listening to music on the road and thought of this one. They were talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing is a little controversial because there's a lot of artists, well-regarded artists, that have not made it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's a system where once you're in, you're able to vote for, all your favorite bands and kind of have a say in how that system works. Or is it? And that's kind of where I'm going with the whole conspiracy theory segment is how does that really work internally? We don't know because we're not part of it. We all know that the music industry is not the cleanest. I think we talked about it last episode. There's a lot of payola that happens. There's a lot of favoritism. There's lots of who do you know, what do you know kind of thing. And something that really just like dawned on me with the whole Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing is Rage Against the Machine. Yep, they're not. We're mentioning it on this episode as always.
We did it, yes.
Drink.
Yes, drink. They were supposed to tour, right? Before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they didn't get in. And I thought, wow, how is that possible? Like, everyone respects this band. Everyone from every genre. I mean, I've seen tweets from Jimmy Page, like him saying like it's one of the best concerts he's ever seen in his life. Like, it just seems very bizarre that they didn't make the cut. But they postponed their tour, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a business play. It's not on the band, but it's definitely on maybe management or whatever as a conspiracy theory that if their tour got postponed to next year, are they going to get nominated again next year to coincide with the tour? And what I mean by this is I'm going to compare this to like the Olympics or something. A lot of the times they'll spotlight an athlete, and that athlete ends up winning, whatever race or whatever. And it just seems very programmed. And that's the way I saw this. I'm like, oh, okay. They delayed this tour pretty far out. Like this tour, I think quite a few episodes ago, I was talking about how I was buying tickets to this upcoming tour. As soon as they didn't make it in, they were nominated, but didn't quite make the cut. I was like, okay, this just seems too convenient that they're going to make it in maybe next year. And to tie it all together, that eventually when they do make it, it's going to be chaos. Zach De La Rocha is going to make the most iconic speech ever in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's just going to light the place on fire. So it's almost like a half liability, half like this is going to sell more records, half like, let's put this all together. Let's package this all for 2022. It's just not quite ready for 2021 yet.
Okay.
Yeah, conspiracy.
So that...
I think Twan and I have the same thought.
Well, no, I mean, okay. So what you said about you don't know what the ingredients are to get into the Hall of Fame. Yep. And it makes me think of like how much of it is on the artist and their management to lobby for it.
Yep.
Yes. Exactly.
And I don't think they give a fuck about it.
They don't care.
Is that that was your thought?
I don't think they care. I don't think. Finish your thought, and then I'll tell you what I think. But
no,
yeah,
I mean,
I don't think they care about that.
That's the gist of it. Like, I gotta believe, like, when you go apply for a job, like, half of it's your persistence and obviously your qualifications, but like, they're gonna know if you don't want the gig. You know what I mean? Like, they can see the hunger or whatever. I almost feel like that's it, where it's like, hey, we didn't get in. Like, it's almost like, all right, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thought.
That is part of my thought. The other part of my thought is, okay, so they were supposed to go on tour, and you're like saying it should link up with going on tour. Do you think that's for monetary gain, Nate?
Yes, definitely. Like what I'm saying is it's definitely not the band, but I think it's whoever pulls the strings behind it. Like,
okay,
hey, we didn't, like, as the band, we didn't make it, and they're probably, like you said, they don't care. Like, oh shit, even if we got it, we wouldn't even show up, kind of thing. But the management is working in tandem with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like, hey, let's put him in next year because like we'll be on tour at that point and it'll coincide great for the promotion leading up to these things.
That's just so not Rage Against the Machine.
As a band, for sure, but as the label, I mean, they were on Epic Records. You know what I mean?
Right, but I mean, okay, so they haven't put a new album out in 22 years, right? 99.
Wow.
Yeah. First of all, secondly, they go on tour, they're gonna sell stuff out. Like whether or not their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is knocking, you know what I mean? So this is why, and I'm not gonna try to poke holes, but like what I do think is it's beneficial for the Rock Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to push them to next year. I don't think it has anything to do with the band or them moving units. Do you know what I mean? I think they're gonna move units either way.
Yeah. I mean, it ultimately still ties back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's the conspiracy theory is still the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not necessarily, Rage Against the Machines, whatever they're under, Q Prime or whoever managed this then, and like them pulling the strings. It's more Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like, ooh, we should actually delay this because then it'll work together with their tour perfectly. So let's put this on the table for now.
I can see that on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame side. I do not see that on the band side at all. Or even definitely. The band's management. I think they would tell the management to fuck off.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I don't know. When money's involved, money talks.
Yeah, maybe not. That's
walks.
true. Yeah. And the other thing is, like, I'd love to say, yeah, they're going to go and Zach's going to give an amazing speech, but that hasn't been him over the years either. So
I know.
Like, I don't think that's going to happen. Tom Morello might. I could totally see him doing it, going and giving an amazing speech because I mean he doesn't shy away from the spotlight. He's always been kind of present.
Oh, totally.
I mean, that's a great point because the only time that Zach speaks is on stage, one, or two, early in the career. All those like early in his career, all those like iconic interviews he's so young. He's like fresh out of Inside Out, and it's really around the self-titled era.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Maybe he's, I don't know. Like it intrigues me like what Zach we're gonna get at like Boston Calling. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I can pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could go multiple ways. So Zach De La Rocha inducted Patti Smith into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so he has been in that room before.
Interesting.
And that's a little off radar for him to even do that in the first place. He must have a huge admiration for Patti Smith. But to the point where I was thinking, like, if this happens, he's going to make an iconic speech, mainly because of the state of the world. You know what I mean? The amount of transparency and just utter chaos with, the government, not only in this country, but on an international scale, and just so many things that are very obvious that we're seeing, like, okay, a lot of them tying to conspiracy theories, right? Or even things that Rage Against the Machine were talking about as a band in their heyday are kind of coming true now. I just feel like, okay, so if this happens, conspiracy theory aside, and they actually do get inducted, I feel like if Zach does make a speech, he's just gonna go all out and say
he inducted Patti Smith.
Yeah,
I'm surprised that wasn't Bruce.
Yeah,
interesting.
They might have both been there, but yeah.
Oh, I'm sure Bruce is there. I mean,
yeah,
Bruce doesn't shy away from it either.
No, but you're right with Tom. Tom would be the vocal one if not Zach, because I mean he has 3 shows on Sirius XM, and he's very active for sure.
I mean, the conspiracy in itself is what goes into the whole getting in is a conspiracy of itself. Maybe we'll do a R&R Hall of Fame episode at some point.
We talked about it a little bit with the Itch. I don't know if it made it to the podcast, but I mean, they did a whole episode on it too. It's shady. It feels shady to me. I mean, if they were nominated this year, they should have gotten in. Like, who are we talking about here? Like, they're not one of the most influential, iconic hard rock or adjacent bands ever. They're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, who the fuck are you kidding?
Who is? Like, who's getting in? And
right.
You know what I mean? I would think they'd be first ballot. And
me too.
It kind of reminds me of the Grammys. Like, I was listening to the Joe Budden podcast for a while, and he was Grammy nominated, I think, for Pump It Up. So he would get a ballot because he was a nomination. And I think Greg Bergdorf, right? Greg?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, like, you're giving ballots to people that may or may not be even in tune with music anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm just curious what the formula is for the Hall of Fame. I assume it's a little more structured. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe.
I mean, it seems like it's not always on the pulse of what's going on.
Right.
It's the, like, sometimes it's the Hall of Very Good, sometimes it's not rock and roll at all. So who knows, man? I don't live in a world where Rage Against the Machine wouldn't be a first ballot Hall of Famer. We obviously, if you listen to us and we've talked about them numerous times, they're one of our favorite bands collectively. They should be in, but maybe there's something to the Rock Hall being like, let's push this to when they're on tour so we can, like, make it a bigger deal for us. I could see that for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's mainly what I was saying. I was definitely not saying it was on the band. Maybe their management working behind the scenes with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to delay it for monetary gain reasons, but definitely not exactly like Zach. If we delay this next year, we'll all make more money. I don't think he's like, oh yeah. I don't think he's like, let's do that. I doubt that. Really doubt that. In fact, I would bet against that not being the case at all. Yeah, I mean, we could just do a conspiracy theory episode on just the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
as just that, right? Yeah, it's a very complicated issue. But yeah, that was the first one that came to mind. I know it's a little spread out, but it ultimately comes down to how do these things work, and how the hell, like you said, Tone, was Rage not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It's like, if you compare it to like the the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's like, well, Pete Rose didn't get in. We all know why. Rage Against the Machine didn't get in, but like, there's no reason to it. Did they really get outvoted by LL Cool J? Maybe. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on who was in that class, and
yeah,
I'd have to look at it. But man, I mean, you'd have to think it would likely be someone that maybe started around the same time. And I'm trying to think of, I'd have to look it up. But
well, they've been around for more than 25 years, right? They've been around for closer to 30,
right? Yeah,
and it's 25 years before you're eligible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how many years now have they not gotten in? Like, that's weird too.
Good start, Nate.